All right, good afternoon, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started in the interest of all of your time. Thank you all for being here today for our monthly coordinators meeting. I'll just welcome our new team members. Some of you guys get to meet for the first time today. I do have a call review to go over today. We'll review a few tech updates that are going to come out within the next month. I have actually a lot of metrics from all of last year combined for us to talk about, and then some educational stuff. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Beth, who's right there behind me, but I'm not behind her because modern day. All right, so Beth is our STARS project manager. She just joined the team, and she has a pretty extensive background. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
Um, I have been here at Cardinal Glennon now for 12 years. Started out as a neonatal ICU nurse and then transitioned through some management roles and has led the ICU here for about 5 years as their manager and have a big passion for the STARS program and was excited about the opportunity to come join them and see how we can spread this program bigger and better.
I like it. You're hired. Awesome. And then just because I see a few newer faces who may not know him, and I'm going to put him on the spot, but Ryan, I was just going to make sure you get a chance to introduce yourself as the children's STARS rep currently, because some people in here probably haven't met you yet.
For somebody that doesn't like to put people on the spot, you do it frequently. So
Pretty good
hey everybody, I'm Ryan Johnson. I have spent the last 14 years on the transport team, and in July I transitioned to trauma services, EMS outreach, and so one of my roles is taking care of the STARS program here on the children's side of things. So, and I lean on Nick a whole lot.
Right, this is a team effort. So just for everybody, so you can put a face to a name, and I'm sure you will talk to Mr. Ryan here at some point. I did pick out a call review for today. This is from a little bit earlier this month. Uh, just a chance to kind of review some things that go a little bit different for these kiddos. Maybe some opportunity for improvement. You guys know I like my RFI, so room for improvement. It was a daytime call, so nobody can cry off that they were tired because it was 4 a.m. And this is for a well-known to STARS, well-known to this ambulance district kiddo, who's been run many times. And so you can see we got alter mental status, sick case. I won't read all of this to you, but the gist of it is sick for 4 days, and the family would like him to be evaluated for alter mental status. Got a blood sugar at 92 here, preferred destination. They did bring him directly to tertiary, which we're always appreciative of, and then some of the documentation basics there. So we did have this patient for a fairly long time. So at patient side, you can see we depart at 9:51, destination here. So nearly 45 minutes of patient care. And this is from the STARS form directly for this kiddo. So you can see he does tend a little bit to the bradycardic side, normalish blood pressure, 94%, and SATs about, or I'm sorry, temp of about 97.3. This kid has an extensive history of adrenal crisis and requiring steroids for his emergencies. He actually also has a pretty well documented history of that dysautonomia where he just tends to, if one vital sign starts to slide, it drags all of the others with it. I don't know if Doc Laffey's on, but I mean, he will occasionally joke, some of the kids do act a little bit more like snakes, and they're very or environmentally dependent. So especially if their temperature starts to drop, you'll get lower blood pressures and heart rates. So this kid has a pretty extensive documented history of that. This is kind of the extent of the treatments that were documented and rendered for this patient. So we put him on a cot and we monitored him and we drove him. So I get that it's probably a well-known patient, but you do always have to kind of pick up on when something's different that day, or this kid is actually fitting their emergency, even if it's not what you were expecting to see. So just to kind of highlight, we have 5 sets of vital signs from EMS. We were bradycardic throughout. We were a bit on the hypotensive side, even for this patient throughout. And we do not have a documented temperature anywhere. That is only of note because if you caught in the narrative at the beginning, they did say unable to obtain pulse ox, unable to obtain manual BP due to patient being cold. So I understand that all of our devices have things that prevent us from maybe obtaining a good vital sign, but I think the second you document that your patient is too cold to do something, you should probably also grab a temperature to go with that, just to back that up, or at least your attempts to try. So just of note, I mean, this kid was instantly a code sepsis upon arrival to our ED for altered mental status, altered vital signs, and he actually had a presenting temperature of 90.6. And immediately was put in the bear hugger in the ED room. Did undergo a couple hours of fluid resus, that temperature management with the bear hugger. He did get his steroids administered and ultimately did end up on an epi drip for a while because even the fluid resus was not getting his blood pressure back up, and then was admitted to the ICU. So I think just a little bit of room for improvement. I can on some level understand, a crew knowing a patient well and saying, well, he's pretty close to his baseline or pretty close to his norms, but this kid was just off enough. He was off in the direction that we know his emergencies do go, and that's part of what we're trying to document and provide to the crews. So certainly meant to be a tool to help justify when you should move in that direction of administering a steroid, starting IO, giving fluid resus. And so I think just a little bit of room for improvement on this one, but just want to kind of highlight too, like how these patients that we're not comfortable with, it can be a little bit subtle. But as long as we know what their emergency is, like we will try to give that to you. And I think it's kind of speaks for itself that it went from like, oh well, he's sick times 4 days, we'll go get him checked out, to like this kid is getting crashed in the ED and then immediately admitted up to the PICU. I think kind of illustrates that there probably was just a bit more to be picked up and done for this patient on a 45-minute transport. So hopefully something we can all kind of take away and hopefully help our crews understand. And then thank you. Yeah, I don't want to answer scams. All right. Yeah, so something we can take away for them, help our crews understand. And also I just think that piece of a lot of us are in the QI business or in the position to help our crew members write better trip sheets, and there is always justifiable deviation for why you don't do things, but like you need to have the other stats that back that up. And so if you say your patient's too cold for a pulse ox, you probably should have a temp that backs that statement up. And I think. All right. Any questions about the call review at all, or?
Hey, Nick, it's Amanda from Hazelwood.
Hey, Amanda.
Is it possible to, I guess I could see the recording, but is it possible for you to send out those particular slides so that we could maybe just bring it to the crews and be like, hey, this is something to look at and remember?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can just we can PDF out the presentation afterwards and share it with everybody.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We have like the little heat gun type thermometers, and they're not always accurate. So if we're trying, especially with the weather being as cold as it is, so if we're trying to get a temperature and it doesn't flag immediately as something that may be an accurate hypothermic temperature, should we go ahead and treat for the possible adrenal, or should we actually just kind of wait and just focus more on trying to warm the patient up?
It's a good question. Obviously, we can be limited by our tools. To me, like for a patient like this, like, if we're documenting like this is their emergency and you're getting other signs and symptoms that are in agreement, I mean, you could kind of almost justify this kid getting his steroid just off of the lower blood pressure, the lower heart rate. We know we're kind of already there. So if you're also getting a low temperature on the thermometer, if the crew member doesn't trust that, that's one thing, and maybe document that. But I think if your other signs and symptoms are already kind of telling you this is this kid's standard emergency, this is kind of where he gets to, for full disclosure, this kid gets steroids almost every time he comes to the emergency department. So I think that's kind of how I would think through it in my head. And as I coach my providers, um, kind of in alignment with some other things we have, like, right, say you have a really sick respiratory person and the pulse ox won't pick up, you document why the pulse ox won't pick up. Oh, he feels really cold. But, if he's also blue and cyanotic, like, okay, like we just gave oxygen because we presume he's low for this other justification that we see. That would be my thoughts on it. Does that sound good, Miss Nicole?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, my son had adrenal insufficiency for the first several months of his life, and the hospital always told us that if there's even a question, just give him the steroids. Giving him the steroids is going to do a lot less damage if he doesn't need them than not giving them if he does need them. So,
I agree with that 100%, Mr. Matt. Did just want to reiterate, I think a lot of people on here were last meeting as well, but just we do continue to work on those help documents and resources. So if there's a provider you have who needs some help with the STARS website, there are some documents in there to help them update passwords, or if you need to change any details on your service provider account, there's documentation for how to do all of that. You are certainly welcome to reach out to us here in the STARS office, but just sometimes it may save you some time waiting for me to email you back to you if the documentation is already there on the website. So just a reminder on that. And then we're going to continue to just be updating the info website, the support one that parents can reach and outside providers and personnel can reach. So this should deploy within the next month. But we're going to add some disaster resources in there for the family. So especially for my agencies that are doing some community paramedicine or some home visits, another place where you can just have some more resources to share with the family. For instance, I think there's like the Be Ready is a FEMA communication plan is in there. So helping a family prior to a disaster set up like, oh, this is who we call for our different emergencies. Here's our one family member that doesn't live in the area, so hopefully somebody can reach them. So there's like a lot of really good national resources that will be listed in there. Just extra tools and things to help that interaction with our families and our communities. One other update that'll be coming out here within the next month that some of you will see or probably will affect you. The families all do have the badges. Each star has the badge up there available to print. We are going to take half the real estate from the badge and have some directions for how to call 911 on the back of it. Trying to help remind families that they do need to often take those steps to activate stars. We have, of course, a few areas where dispatch is still geolocating, but that is just not a foolproof system either. What we really want the families to do is to lead each 911 call with, I am calling for this STARS patient, so that can be relayed to your crews. So we're going to use this as a tool. The parents often are pretty good at this, but what we continue to see is sometimes the other family members aren't. We have an example of a call from last month. It was a cardiac arrest, and a lot of times those are the calls where the parent isn't the one who calls, right? Like they're yelling down the hall to have a family member call. And so unfortunately the family did not report the number, and so the crew didn't learn until they got to the patient that they were a STARS patient. So we'd really like to try and keep that going so that everybody in that kid's solar system is aware that how to call 911 and how to lead the scripting on the call. So that's something that you'll see out there as we try to kind of continue to address that challenge. And try to get the calls done as best as possible. So a few for my agencies where you're going out to visit families or providing them with copies of their badges. Just want you to know about that. And really, if you could just take a moment to really emphasize to the family how the call works or how we can make it work best so that they're relaying to dispatch and dispatch is relaying to your crews, and we're getting that information to the crews, however that works in your area. All right, now some numbers for last year in a fuzzy map. Did in the year 1,589 active stars, so knocking on the door of 1,600 there. We added 10 in the month of December. Continue to just see growth in dispatches year over year, and then also emergency activations. So as far as my dispatch agencies that just log in as part of their process, it looks like Central County 911 took the award for last year. So I'm sure Collinsville will be gunning back for them next year. I don't know what to tell Jeffco. I guess if we add their one board and their two board, they can log in 560 times a year. But so a little friendly competition, but I do think it works well whenever the dispatch agencies do log in and are ready to go for the call versus trying to call or try to log into STARS as soon as the family calls. If you could just already have it in and available in a browser. Have been talking to a couple more of the local dispatch agencies, and we're trying to continue to improve adherence there. So if you're an agency who would like me to reach out to your dispatch or you want to make that connection, if they're not already doing the dispatch component for you, please let me know and I will do my best. I do think we've continued to simplify it. It's 7 button clicks. It'll be 8 now coming up, I guess, next month when they can now send your individual units versus your whole agency. But I'm happy to talk to whichever agencies you need me to. 29 dispatches for December, so kind of into the year down just a little bit. And then emergency activations was 206 though. You all are probably aware we do now track why people get into the calls off the Break the Glass. The more noteworthy thing I thought was at least noteworthy, we had over 2,000 plan views in the month of December 2024. And just a little personal reflection, at least, like we've really come a long ways since the binders. And I know many of you have been on that journey with us, so it's kind of cool to see like the system continue to grow and the way people access and use it. For all of 2024, we had 415 911 transport calls, 57 non-transports that we know of, and saw strong numbers just throughout the year on directed tertiary transport. And then one thing we'd like to try and work on maybe for a little bit of improvement this year is just getting the STARS number and info or referred to in the trip sheet, just to help us with our documentation on our side. We do track a few patient populations a little bit differently, and just looking at some more data for them. And so Morella pulled out, our 911 transport calls with our tracheostomy patients. We had 57 for last year. If you're curious, what's the biggest size or the most common size? It's a Bavona 4.0. That might be more of a DME stat than an EMS stat. And then we have it pulled out the reasons for the calls just throughout the year there. And then we also track seizures pretty closely, especially Dr. Finney's been doing some work on this as well. And so just trying to track more and more data about the seizure calls that are happening with STARS. So there were 45 last year. And what we're kind of watching is medication dosing, and especially when we have specialty meds being used that are appropriate for the kids' plan, but maybe deviate from protocol, just as kind of looking at, are we getting the right treatment in for the kids, and kind of monitoring like when is that really successful when it might not have been for a kiddo if we just would have blindly followed protocols on them. So just something that we are watching there. And then MD approvals taking about 4.6 days on average currently once we submit it to them for approval. Just want to mention education. Congratulations, everybody. It's 2025. We're to a new year. I hesitate to say this too loudly, but training-wise, my schedule is not filled up that much. And so we'll have to kind of get out there this year and visit with you guys. So we do have a big symposium we're doing in mid-Illinois. Thanks, Steph. Coming up at the end of the month. I think we're up to like 250 enrollees, but that's a free one for my middle of Illinois peeps who would be interested in that. And then also just something else that's kind of come up, we've been doing, I think, more and more going to the primary schools and hitting the students while they're going through paramedic school. So if any of you also adjunct or primary at one of the paramedic schools, and you would like to get us in there for a day to talk about special pops, I'd be happy to come out and talk about the kids and STARS patients and some of the things that could really benefit them there. And then, of course, our CME courses and coming out and doing STARS updates at your agencies. So happy to work on all of that. So that was everything that I had prepared for today. As far as open topics, actually, real quick before I did open topics, one thing that had come up talking with Beth, feedback on our system. Like, first of all, if you're one of the agencies who loves it, we definitely want to talk to you. But if your crew members or you in the role that you hold can give us feedback on, it would really help if the website did this or this functionality over here is only so. Feedback on the plans, like, do we need to improve the color coding or something like that? And so we'd like to sit down either via Teams, or if you want us to drive out and drink coffee in your chief's office, we'll gladly sit there and do it that way too. But we're kind of in a pretty dynamic phase from STARS right now, and as far as getting resources and working on things and trying to fix things as we get ready to roll out in a couple new places. And so we would love to hear from the people who have been using it, ways we can make it better for you. So, all right. So that's everything I had prepared. Happy to sit here and if anybody's got any questions or comments or concerns. And for those of you who need a fly or a bathroom break between all your meetings, you're certainly welcome to step out a few early if you need to. Everybody wants to hang out with me, but nobody wants to say anything.
We transported a star a couple days ago we don't interact with them very much. I can't remember a time we've transported this child, but they were one of the early stars. They're at 800 number.
Are
And
the initials AB?
yes.
Okay.
And the family didn't want us to do anything, really, just supportive care. And so we were trying to brainstorm some options to fix this child that I guess probably seized all the way to Glennon because they wouldn't give permission for us to give Versed or ketamine, no IVs. The family had given their rescue drugs unsuccessfully. And so my olive branch when we talk to them is going to be to see if we can negotiate some type of intranasal Versed or intranasal ketamine or something, options to break the seizures when their regular plan's not working. I'm sure he's going through a growth spurt, and that's why he went out of therapeutic range, because the family is pretty good at managing it themselves. So.
No, and I agree with your olive branch. It kind of stood out to me too, reading through the documentation on that one. I kind of gather that, family has had a long history of IVs not being successful for the kid, and they
agreed. Yeah. And I totally feel for them. I would not want someone poking around in a moving truck on my very sensitive young child. But also I don't want them seizing all the way to the hospital from St. Charles County. So
I agree. The same idea occurred to me. Like, I think an IN ketamine or IN Versed dose, then IN ketamine or IM if they're willing to tolerate it.
I think their biggest concern with the absolutely no medicine was that it wasn't already in the plan, even though they had been talking about adding ketamine with their neuro doctor, and they were wholly uncomfortable with us going outside of the written plan, even though the ED doc on the phone offered both of those meds. So anyway, once we talk to the family, I'm gonna see if I can get them.
I'm totally on board with that. I think an opportunity it's what kind of our plans are for, is to see if we can recapture that a little bit and work around that. I will say, just as a side note, I did read the ED doc notes, and it just, I had a chuckle because, like when you've had that uncomfortable interaction with the family and they won't do what you want, and you just document it to the nines of how hard you tried to support them and help them. And it's the first time I've ever seen an ED doctor write the same way a paramedic does. So
goodness. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's such an uncomfortable position because you want to help them and they're so they're so like traumatized from the medical system that I don't know.
Really agree.
We also have a child. I didn't see it in the seizure slide you have. We've transported her many times this year for sort of atypical seizures, and maybe that's why she's not in there because they're not typical seizures. And I think she's a children, so maybe that might also be why it's not in the data set. But she has a neuro disorder that I don't think they're not like electrical epileptic seizures, but they present as seizures, and she desats with them. And the medicine cocktail they found that works the best is almost like a migraine cocktail with Toradol, Benadryl, Compazine. We looked into ordering Compazine specifically to help her, and we can't order it. Like, I think they've stopped making it for us or something. Like, there's a black box around it.
Huh.
So,
Yeah. So I'm aware of that one. I think that's probably a conversation we'll have to take to Doc Finney on that
Yeah.
one. So
yeah, we've engaged. I just thought it was interesting and worthy of mentioning.
appreciate that stuff.
I have a quick question for you, Nick.
Yeah.
We are my transport agency. We're kind of newer to the STARS program. My base has only been in it for probably a year and a half now, and we have 2 bases that have just recently joined. Is there any way that we could jump on like a Teams meeting with you and you can go through like how to activate these kids and just more with the web-based stuff because everyone has lots of questions about it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you're having some base meetings and I can do each base individually. So if you just want to send me days for the next base meeting days for those bases, I'd be happy to pop on and Teams meeting, or if I'm in the area, I can try to come in person.
Perfect. I appreciate it.